Hey crafters, have you ever wondered how to make realistic looking sand just with ink blending? Well, if so, you've come to the right place. Now you can use any stamp sets for this, but today I'm going to use two stamp sets from Simon Says Stamps. The older one's called Beautiful Mermaids, and the newer one's called Be a Mermaid. I love combining old and new stamp sets. Now I've stamped one of the mermaid stamps from Beautiful Mermaids and the two mermaid tails using a Copic friendly ink, and I wanted them to be very dark, so I've double stamped them with my stamp positioner. Now because these are mermaids, they have to sparkle. So what I've done is some very simple Copic coloring. Starting with a darker blue, B02, I'm just outlining the image. It doesn't have to be perfect. Then I'm going to use my lighter blue, which is B00, and fill in. Don't worry too much about shading here because we're going to be adding something on top. So starting with the NUEVO crystal drops in the Blizzard color, I'm going to just fill in over the tail area and then pick up the loose glitter and drop it on top of the tail. So I'm just concentrating this glitter on the center of the tail, and then the rest of the tail is going to have a thin layer of the NUEVO crystal drops. This will help the whole mermaid look sparkly and fabulous. It looks gorgeous. So it takes at least a half an hour for this to set, but as you can see, these two fins and the mermaid look beautiful, and that sparkle is perfect for this card. How gorgeous. Now to start with our sand, the first thing we need to do is take our panel and decide which area is going to be sand and which is going to be water. So I'm just using post-it note tape for this, but you could use anything, even a piece of paper, as long as you hold it down securely to create a mask. Using antique linen distress ink, I'm just roughly inking over the area where the sand will be. Don't worry about ink blending too much here. It's okay if it looks a little bit patchy at this point. So now I'm going to transform my distress ink into sand. Using my distress ink blending brush and some vintage photo distress oxide, I'm going to pounce all over the area that is going to become sand. Already you can see a huge difference. Now you don't have to use as much brown or vintage photo as I'm using here, or you can use more. It's all up to you and how dark you want your sand to be. Now I'll just give you a quick peek here before I move on to some ground espresso. So the trick with this technique is to hold your brush so that the bristles are very small, and that way you'll get this pouncing technique. You could try this with another brush, but I find that the distress blending brushes are perfect for this. Now to make our sand look a bit more realistic, we're going to take some white pigment ink and a finger dauber and just pounce or rub along where the water and the sea would meet. And just a little inking tip here, if you're working with white ink, it's always best to put it on your craft mat rather than put your tools into the ink, because that might get your ink pad dirty. Now I'm going to remove the mask on the ink and place the opposite piece just to cover up the sand so that we can move on to the water. We will add some more effects to the sand, but first we'll do the water. Now I want to take full advantage of the Distress Oxide's capabilities and use some water misting as well. So I've covered up our sand with a bit of scrap paper so that it doesn't get ruined in the process. So using our Speckled Egg Distress Oxide as the lightest blue, I'm just going to blend the bottom third of the panel with that. If you haven't had a chance to use Speckled Egg yet, I would highly recommend it because it's fabulous. It works well as a blue, a green, or even a gray. Now moving on to the mid-tone here, I'm using Broken China Distress Oxide and adding that into the center of the card. And the top third of the card will be the Faded Jeans Distress Oxide. These three blues are one of my favorite color combinations, and it looks perfect for a sky or an ocean. Now once I've put the colors down roughly where I want them to be, I'm going to go back and get rid of those lines in between the colors by adding some more ink and blending it all out. And this is what really makes a difference when you're ink blending a background. If you're new to ink blending, I would suggest you lay out your colors first and then go back and blend over the areas until you get a nice smooth blend. Now once I'm happy with this, I'm going to use my mister from above and gently mist the Distress Oxide. And you can see it's starting to react already. This will give it a wonderful water look. Now I thought it would be fun to tuck the mermaid tails into the water. So what I'm doing is using my craft knife and a ruler and just making a slit as wide as the tail on either side of the panel for my two mermaid tails. And then using my craft knife, I'll just make sure those holes are nice and thick. Don't worry if you tear your paper a little bit when making these holes, because we're going to use our Cosmic Shimmer fluffy stuff around the holes and on the horizon line to add that final touch to our sand and make it look realistic. I've also added a little tiny dots in the water as well to make it look like sea foam. Using our heating tool, I'm heating the fluffy stuff and I'm holding it so that it heats away from me so that it goes in one direction. If you've never worked with this before, it's brilliant for Christmas scenes and snow scenes. Now once everything's dry, we can put our card together. So I'm going to tuck in the two mermaid tails into the slits that we have created, and then flip the panel over and secure them with double-sided adhesive. You could use any kind of tape for this. I just had it on hand. And then I'm going to add some foam squares to the back of my mermaid and place her on the beach there. So she's surrounded by her mermaid friends. This looks wonderful. I'm also going to add some sparkles around the card, some little stars and little air bubbles. I've also put some foam tape behind the mermaid tails as well so they stand up. Last but no means least, we're going to add a sentiment in the inside of the card. Usually I would stamp in black, but I thought it would be fun to stamp with Faded Jeans Distress Oxide, so we have a similar color as on the outside of the card. The only thing with using Distress Oxides to stamp is that you might need to do it 2 or 3 times until you get the effect that you want. Now using double-sided adhesive, I'm going to adhere my card to my card blank. And that's my card. My beautiful mermaid card is finished. I hope you enjoyed seeing this sand effect. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you've learned a little bit about making realistic sand and sparkly mermaids.